Jobless, are you? My father's voice cut through the dining room like a knife, half laughing, fully dismissive. My mother chuckled politely, clearly embarrassed by my presence. My chair was wedged at the corner of the table, like an afterthought, between the ficus plant and my father's tax attorney. They thought I had nothing to show for myself, no title, no office, no worth. But I knew what was coming. Right then, Jenkins, the family's longtime butler, entered with a silver tray. "Mr. Dawson," he said evenly, "your advance copy of Fortune magazine." My father reached for it, still smirking. He flipped the cover and froze. There I was. My name. My face. Bold letters read, "Youngest fashion billionaire." I stood up, slowly, my voice steady. "I guess I'm not as jobless as you thought." They didn't see it coming. But maybe it was time they finally did. When I was a kid, I didn't sketch stick figures or doodle princesses. I designed gown-slayered silhouettes, textured fabrics, swatches taped to notebook pages like pressed flowers. While other children played house, I played runway. My parents saw it as a phase. "We love your creativity, Chloe," my mom would say with a tight smile. "But remember, fashion is a hobby. Business is a career." At 12, I was told to shadow my uncle at Dawson, Grant Capital. By 15, I was signed up for every financial prep course available. I aced them. Not because I loved it, but because I hated losing ground in a house where success was currency. When college applications came, I applied to Columbia Business School as expected and Parsons School of Design, in secret. I got into both. I told my parents I chose Columbia. They believed me. But I moved to New York, enrolled at Parsons, and lived a double life. By day, I wore blazers and sat in required business seminars to keep up the act. By night, I stitched samples in my dorm room under LED lights, fueled by coffee and podcasts about iconic designers. I interned quietly for an indie fashion house in Soho, under an alias Clara Langston. I even had to block my mom from my private Instagram account where I posted my early designs. Her concern came like clockwork anytime she caught a glimpse of what I was really working on. Still, I kept going. I designed my first full capsule collection during sophomore year and uploaded it onto a handmade website under the brand name C.L. Dawson Neutral, anonymous and perfect. I made 10 sales that semester, then 50, then 300. But every Sunday call home felt like a performance. Dad would ask, "How's macroeconomics going?" Mom would chirp, "Any interest from Goldman yet?" And I'd lie, smile, say I was networking. The truth? I was broke, overworked, and thrilled. I wasn't chasing Wall Street. I was chasing vision. And for once, it felt like I was living my own story. But living a double life came at a cost. I couldn't go home during breaks without scrubbing myself. No design sketches, no fabric scraps, no fashion talk. I became a ghost in my own family, quietly watching as my cousins got praised for hedge fund internships and six-figure analyst jobs. No one asked about me. They assumed I was still figuring it out. I let them. Because the thing they didn't understand was that sometimes figuring it out means letting go of their map and drawing your own. And mine? It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was silk, steel, and a dream stitched into every seam. Success, I'd learned, doesn't walk in with trumpets. Sometimes, it limps in disguised as disaster. By junior year, my brand C.L. Dawson had a modest but loyal customer base. I was handling orders, managing a tiny production team of 2 classmates, and pitching a pop-up at a small Brooklyn fashion fair. I was exhausted but finally starting to believe I could make it. Then came the investor. He was sleek, well-connected, and loved my vision, said all the right things about democratizing fashion and elevating sustainable design. He offered to fund a capsule launch in exchange for partial licensing of the brand. I was young, flattered, and naive. I signed the deal. Within 6 months, my designs were everywhere on knockoff sites. The investor had outsourced everything to a fast fashion manufacturer overseas, diluted my silhouettes, cut corners, and slapped my logo on clothes I hadn't even touched. I had lost creative control. Worse, me name was now on things I didn't believe in. When I tried to reclaim my rights, he pointed to the fine print. I'd given him exactly what he needed. I cried for days. It wasn't just a business failure, it was identity theft. I had poured my soul into those designs, and now, they were being sold for $19.99 next to polyester tracksuits on discount racks. I shut down the site. Cancelled pending orders. Issued apologies I couldn't afford. I felt like I'd betrayed the people who believed in my vision and worse, myself. When I called home, needing someone to say it would be okay, I got the opposite. Dad sighed. We knew this would happen. Fashion is a risky game, Chloe. That's why we wanted you in finance. Predictable, secure. Mom was softer, but her words still cut. Maybe it's time to come home and start over properly. By properly, she meant cubicles, dress codes, and someone else's ladder. They didn't say, I'm sorry. They said, I told you so. I hung up the phone and sat on the cold floor of my tiny apartment, surrounded by bolts of unused fabric, unanswered emails, and the sharp sting of public failure. For weeks, I barely left my apartment. I deactivated my social accounts, ghosted friends, and avoided mirrors. My identity had been so tightly bound to my dream that now, stripped of it, I didn't know who I was. Was I a one-hit wonder? A naive artist? A fraud? Some nights, I imagined what life would look like if I gave in, if I called my dad back and said, fine, I'll join the firm. They'd welcome me, hand me a desk, erase the mess and offer a neat path forward. But something inside me clenched every time I considered it. Not anger, not pride. Conviction. Because even in failure, I'd felt something I never felt in their world: freedom. And I wasn't ready to give that up. It started with an email. Subject line: I saw your work. Let's talk. At first, I almost deleted it. I thought it was spam, another scammer, or someone trying to sell me fake followers, but something about the sender name stopped me. Romy Halberd. The Romy Halberd. Creative director of Halberd Atelier, the woman behind Half the Red Carpet Looks at Cannes last year. I stared at the screen, rereading it a dozen times. Her message was short but electric. Someone forwarded me your archived capsule. It's raw, brave, I'd like to meet. I replied instantly. We met 2 days later, in a quiet cafe in the Lower East Side. She arrived in sunglasses and a coat so sharp it could slice air, but her demeanor was surprisingly warm. She asked questions, real ones. Not about numbers or sales funnels, but vision, ethics, identity. I'm tired of pretty, she said, stirring her coffee. Your pieces? They feel like rebellion stitched with grace. For the first time in months, I felt seen. Romy offered mentorship, not money. I don't want to own you, she said. I want to amplify you. She introduced me to a new kind of network pattern makers in Europe, digital illustrators experimenting with AI, investors who cared about mission as much as margins. I spent the next 6 months learning again, this time not just design, but sustainability, supply chain ethics, and fashion tech. That's when Vera plus Chloe was born. Vera, Latin for truth. Chloem. A new brand, a new voice, built on transparency, slow fashion, and digital tools. We used AI-driven modeling to reduce fabric waste, 3D renderings instead of mass samples, and open-source designs for upcycling. The first collection dropped quietly, no influencer campaign, no press junket, just word of mouth and a soft launch via a fashion tech newsletter. Within a week, we sold out. Then came the article in The Verge. The future of fashion may belong to Vera plus Chloe. Then Vogue Business featured our process. Then Gigi Reese wore our silk metal hybrid gown to the Met Gala, and the label was no longer underground. Orders exploded. Celebrities DM'd. Tech founders wanted in. But I stayed low. No interviews, no public appearances. I kept using CL Dawson, let the designs speak. Back home, My parents still believed I was freelancing in graphic design. They called it arts adjacent and seemed relieved I wasn't living off ramen. Every time I looked at a new press mention, I pictured their faces still so confident in their version of who I was. I didn't feel the urge to correct them. Not yet. There was a satisfaction in growing quietly, like watching a tree blossom behind a wall. Let them think it's just weeds until the petals spill over. And I knew that day was coming. Soon. Fame has a strange texture when you're hiding from it. Vera plus Chloe had become a quiet revolution. Our garments were on covers, runways, and showroom racks from Tokyo to Milan. Fashion blogs called us disruptive, intimate, and unapologetically future-minded. Our waitlist stretched months. But back in my family's world, I was still in between things. I kept the illusion alive with carefully vague updates. Just working on some freelance projects, I'd say on the phone. Helping a startup with branding. That was technically true, except I was the startup. My mother would respond with forced encouragement. Well, as long as you're doing something productive with your time, dear. My father barely hid his disappointment. Maybe it's time to send your resume around again. Dawson, Grant is opening a junior analyst role. I'd smile politely, changing the subject. What would he say if he knew his unemployed daughter was negotiating a European expansion deal with Net, a porter? Still, I wasn't ready to tell them. Maybe I was afraid they'd take credit, or worse dismiss it, call it a lucky wave, or something I should convert into a more respectable business. So I stayed in the shadows. My brand's Instagram never showed my face. Our website listed only initials for the founder, C.L.D. When press asked for interviews, I sent my creative director or our sustainability lead. I didn't need the spotlight, just the work. But recognition found me anyway. Forbes named Vera plus Chloe in its 30 under 30 fashion reinventors. We were profiled in TechCrunch for our AI-powered fabric engine. And then came the call from Fortune. The editor's voice crackled through my phone. "We're doing a cover story on next-gen fashion billionaires," she said. "We'd like you to be our feature." I paused, not because I wasn't proud, but because that meant no more shadows. "No aliases?" I asked quietly. She laughed. "No, Chloe. We want you." I hesitated. For years, I had built my power in silence, but something inside me knew it was time. "Yes," I said. "I'll do it, but on my terms." We shot the cover in my studio's sunlight pouring over bolts of silk, tools scattered like paintbrushes. I wore no jewelry, no borrowed designer shoes, just a tailored black jumpsuit I had made myself. Clean. Strong. Unapologetically me. The headline was bold. Youngest fashion billionaire. How Chloe Dawson reinvented the industry before her 28th birthday. The release date? 2 days after our annual family dinner. Perfect. I didn't plan it that way, but when my assistant told me the timing, I didn't change it either. That dinner had always been a parade of job titles and backhanded compliments where I sat quietly while my cousins boasted about hedge fund bonuses and my father praised them with his rare smile. This year, I would sit the same way. Quiet, polite, invisible, until the butler walked in with destiny on a silver tray. The dining room at the Dawson estate hadn't changed in 20 years. Same long walnut table, same crystal chandeliers, same suffocating expectation that everyone bring a resume to the roast beef. I took my seat at the far end next to the window, next to the silence. "Chloe," my mother greeted with a kiss that didn't quite touch. "Still freelancing, dear?" I smiled. Something like that. My father raised his wine glass. "To family," he declared, "and to hard work." His eyes lingered on my cousin Jared, newly promoted VP at an investment firm. Some of us know what that looks like. The implications stung, but I'd expected it. What I didn't expect was how calm I felt. There was power in silence, especially when it preceded a storm. Dinner went on. Jared bragged about stock splits. My aunt recounted the fundraisers she chaired. I focused on my mashed potatoes, smiling when appropriate, nodding when needed. Then it came. "So, Chloe," my father said, swirling his wine. "Any progress in the job search?" I looked up. "I'm not really looking, Dad." He laughed a low, dismissive sound. "Ah, yes. The joys of creative unemployment." A few chuckles joined his. Not cruel, just casual. Casual dismissal. I opened my mouth to respond, but I didn't have to. Because right then, the double doors opened. Jenkins, the butler who had served our family for 3 decades, entered with his usual grace. In his gloved hands was a silver tray. "Apologies for the interruption," he said, his voice neutral. "But Mr. Dawson's advance copy of Fortune magazine has arrived." My father waved him in, not even breaking conversation. "Set it down, Jenkins." "Actually," Jenkins said carefully, "this issue may interest you." My father arched a brow, took the magazine from the tray, and flipped it over mid-sentence. Then stopped. The silence came like a wave. First at his end of the table, then spreading. He stared at the cover. His lips parted but made no sound. "What is it?" my mother asked, concern blooming. Wordlessly, he turned the magazine around. My image stared back at them, shot in soft natural light, arms crossed in my studio, determination in my eyes. The headline screamed, "Youngest fashion billionaire: How Chloe Dawson Reinvented the Industry." No initials, no aliases. Just me. The room froze. A fork clattered. My aunt gasped. Jared's wineglass tipped slightly in his hand. "You're... what?" my mother whispered. "You run Vera plus Chloe?" someone said. "CLD, my cousin muttered. "That was you?" I stood slowly, tucking my napkin beside my untouched plate. "Yes," I said, my voice even. "I built Vera plus Chloe. I own 70% of the company. We've raised 3 rounds of funding. We're in over 200 boutiques globally. And this," I gestured toward the magazine, "is just the beginning." My father stared at me, speechless. Then, finally, "You've been lying to us." "No," I replied. "You've just never asked the right questions." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened again. "But why didn't you tell us?" I scanned the faces around me, some stunned, some skeptical, others full of something new, awe. "Because for years," I said, "you made it clear what success looked like in this family. If it didn't wear a suit and tie, it didn't count. If it didn't come with quarterly reports, it was a phase. You called my work a hobby. And when I failed, you didn't offer support. You offered lectures. I needed space," I continued, "to build something on my own terms without your approval, and especially without your limitations." Jenkins cleared his throat softly. "If I may," he said. "Miss Dawson's brand has recently been profiled in the Wall Street Journal and Business of Fashion. The valuation, if I'm not mistaken, exceeds $1.2 billion. Another silence fell. Then my grandmother, who had said nothing all evening, looked up from the magazine. Her voice was soft but firm. "Chloe," she said, "you've honored this family not by following its path, but by carving your own." I exhaled and smiled. Not because I'd proven them wrong, but because I'd finally proven myself right. Dinner was officially over, though no one had touched dessert. The creme brulee sat untouched as my family slowly broke into side conversations, like aftershocks from an earthquake. Some were whispering, some still blinking at the magazine, as if it might change headlines. I excused myself from the table and made my way to the library sanctuary growing up. A room where I used to hide sketchbooks inside financial textbooks, dreaming under the gaze of dusty oil portraits. Mom found me first. She stood in the doorway, hands folded tightly. For a moment, she just looked at Minot with disdain or doubt, but something closer to unfamiliarity. "I had no idea," she finally said. "I know. You've built something extraordinary, and I missed all of it." I shrugged. "You weren't looking." Her lips pressed into a line. "I was scared. Scared you'd ruin your life chasing something unstable. I thought if I pushed you back towards something practical, you'd save me, I finished for her. But you didn't understand you were pushing me away. She nodded slowly. I do now. There was silence between us. Then, she stepped forward and hugged me tightly this time. Real. I'm proud of you, she whispered, even if I didn't understand the path. We stayed like that for a beat too long. Then came Jared, my cousin. He sauntered in with a glass of bourbon. So, he said, trying to sound casual, you're taking investors for the next round? I laughed. You think I built this just to hand it over? He grinned sheepishly. Had to try. I'll add you to the waitlist, I said with a smirk. Next came my father. He didn't speak right away. He looked at the fireplace, the rugs, the mahogany shelves, then at me. You made us look small tonight, he said. I blinked. That wasn't my intention. I know, he said. But it was necessary. That startled me. He sat in the armchair, the same one where he used to lecture me about respectability and real work. I spent years trying to shape you into someone who would fit our mold, he admitted. Turns out, you weren't made to fit. You were made to build. He paused. I'm trying to process that. So am I said softly. I don't know what kind of father I've been, he said, eyes glinting, but I'd like to be better moving forward. I nodded. Slowly. That starts by seeing me for who I am, not who you hoped I'd be. He stood and extended a hand. Then let's start here. I shook it. And in that moment, we weren't CEO and disappointment, or father and rebellious daughter. We were two builders, finally meeting eye to eye. The next morning, the house felt quieter, not in volume but in energy. My mother had prepared breakfast like nothing happened, but she kept sneaking glances at me over her teacup, like she was seeing me for the first time. My father scrolled through his tablet at the table, pretending to read the news except the screen clearly showed my fortune cover, zoomed in. It was strange, surreal, as if some invisible wall that had always been there between us had finally cracked. After the meal, I asked if I could gather everyone for a moment. It wasn't something I usually did, but this wasn't a usual weekend. They slowly filed into the drawing room, the same one where last night's revelation had landed like a thunderclap. I stood near the window, sunlight warming my shoulders. I'm not here to rub anything in, I began. Or to prove you wrong. My eyes met my father's, then my mother's. I built Vera plus Chloe because I believed in something. A future for fashion that was ethical, innovative, and beautiful. But, more than that, I needed to know I could create something without leaning on this family's name. A beat passed. Now that I've done that, I'd like to invite you in. On my terms. They watched me closely. In a few weeks, I continued, I'll be hosting a private showing at our West Coast headquarters in San Francisco. I'd love for you all to come. See the work, meet the team. Understand what it really means to build something from a blank canvas. My grandmother, seated on the velvet settee, smiled gently. We'd be honored, Chloe. My father stood. We come as guests, he said, not as judges. I nodded. That's all I ever wanted. That evening, I left the estate in my quiet electric car, the same one my cousin once called underachiever chic. The gates opened slowly behind me, but the weight I'd carried for years of not being enough, of being misunderstood, stayed behind. It didn't matter anymore. Not because I'd finally won their approval, but because I no longer needed it to define my worth. Legacy isn't what's handed down in wills or etched into company plaques. Legacy is what you build when no one believes in you. It's the vision you protect in silence. The empire you grow behind doubt. The name you claim not because it was given to you, but because you made it mean something new.